You're listening to 91.7 FM, WSUW, in Whitewater, Wisconsin. You're listening to Rashkin Report. You're listening to WSUW 91.7 FM, The Edge in Whitewater, Wisconsin. This is Rashkin Report, and I'm your host, Yuri Rashkin. I'm joined once again by a very popular and well-respected blogger in Moscow, Russia, Slava Rabinovich. Slava, the other story that seems to have been catching a lot of attention in Russia for obvious reasons is the unfreezing of the frozen conflict in Nagorno Karabakh, which is an area claimed both by Azerbaijan and Armenia. And this seems to have been something that really caught Russian people's attention almost, more than I would have expected. What are your thoughts on this conflict, and who stands behind? What are the causes behind the unfreezing of it?
Well,
or defrosting.
The reason why it strikes a chord with the Russian population is because this conflict and these words, Nagorno Karabakh, sound so familiar to many politically active and socially active people in terms of a couple of generations, so of my generation and also of younger people who remember that was much earlier than Chechnya. That was the Soviet Union problem. That's when it began, and it is a very famous intra-Soviet Union conflict. However, the reason why it also fueling interest, if you can say that, on top of that, is because there were so many people, including myself, who were trying to figure out what would be the next hybrid war that Putin will undertake. Remember, in 2013, Putin's rating of approval started falling drastically. The falsifications of the elections and mass protests in 2011 and 2012. Then anti-constitutional laws adopted by a phony, ill-elected Russian parliament with many laws basically banning public demonstrations, which is against the Russian constitutions. The first political prisoners. Then the economic growth in Russia of 1.3% compared to the U.S. growth of 4% at the time. Also, at the time of $100 a barrel oil, it was clear that the country is moving in a very wrong direction economically and in a very wrong direction politically. And Putin did not want to be responsible for this political and economic crimes, but he was fighting not for the president's chair, he was fighting for his life, because this uncontrolled power and lifelong power is the guarantee for his freedom and, in fact, life. So he needed something to raise his approval rating, and what he did, he annexed the Crimea, and at the same time, the television launched this huge propaganda machine as a Putin, the winner, Putin as a collector of Russian lands, and all of this, stuff like that. and it was really comparable to the annexation of the Sudet region of Czechoslovakia by Adolf Hitler in 1938. You asked me about Nagorno Karabakh. I know that the answer is a little bit longer than you probably expected, but bear with me for just another minute. Then he saw a rating going up based on this Crimea annexation, which was obviously huge international crime and so on and so forth, but it doesn't matter. His rating went up. Then he he waged the war in eastern Ukraine against Ukraine, and there were hundreds of Ukrainian military people dead. In all, there are thousands of killed and wounded and millions of refugees. The Russians downed a passenger plane Boeing of Malaysian Airlines flight MH17, 298 people dead. But the rating was going up, and he needed, when the Ukrainian conflict was waning in terms of the television propaganda, when this drug-added type of public behavior made it clear that it's a drug, it's a television war, and people are addicted to that. He needed to change gears and change the subject, and he launched a campaign in Syria. His stated goals were to fight ISIS, but it was a lie, because Russian military was saving Putin's client, Bashar Assad, from losing power. But the approval rating of Putin was going up, and it reached 90% around December of last year, just 4 months ago. Then terrorist acts in Belgium. A deputy head of the Russian parliament, Vladimir Zhirinovsky, publicly commented that it's on YouTube everywhere. It was on the central television channel in Russia. He was saying, "Let them die and die and die. We are getting a benefit out of the fact that Europe is blowing up." And this is, in fact, these statements are subject. This is a crime in Russia, based on the current laws. If Russian courts were doing what they need to do, he would have been in jail by now. So what happened next is that Putin, everybody was trying to figure out what would be the next geographical point where Putin is going to strike directly or via a hybrid war. And many people were naming Armenia, Azerbaijan, and Nagorno Karabakh, this very old territorial problem. At the time when Armenia is Putin's client, Armenia is supported directly by Putin and the Russian budget, and at the same time Azerbaijan is building what is called the southern corridor of gas pipelines to supply Europe with Azeri gas, bypassing Russia and basically destroying the Russian monopoly, or almost a monopoly, for supplying of Europe. And so Putin's.
But I thought that Azerbaijan purchased their good graces from Kremlin by being a big buyer of Russian military equipment.
That's correct, but this is just by the virtue of Russia selling military equipment to anybody who is willing to buy. That's why Viktor But, a guy who was an arms dealer a Russian arms dealer, is serving 25 years in jail in the U.S.
But if Azerbaijan is spending this kind of money on Russian equipment, then why would Russia do something to endanger the likelihood of that client continuing to spend money?
But Armenia is also purchasing the same equipment. So Russia is selling equipment to anybody, in fact, to any kind of type of enemies, where they can use this equipment and buy even more equipment.
So is Nagorno Karabakh an opportunity to use up some of that equipment?
Well, it's already happened. But what is happening here is that Putin is trying to lit up this conflict once again, and then do something with this Nagorno Karabakh, as he was doing in Prидnestrovia and Moldova, in Abkhazia and Ossetia in Georgia, with Donbass in Ukraine, basically creating these enclaves of unruled territory filled with criminals, and destroying territorial integrity of a state, and making this state much less powerful with these types of so-called internal conflicts, so that these post-Soviet satellites, former Soviet satellites, could come back to the Russian, so-called Russian orbit once again. And then, again, if there is this kind of national, international conflict between Armenia and Azerbaijan, then Putin can come there on a white horse and put an end to that, and take a credit for putting out a conflict, becoming, being thanked for that by the world leaders. This is kind of a idiotic thinking that he continues from the Syrian conflict into any other conflicts that he is going to undertake.
While at the same time cementing a reputation of Russia as a place that it's dangerous to be neighbors with.
That's correct. But in this modern world, the U.S. is a neighbor to Russia as well, regardless of the ocean. We are in an extremely interesting territory here, uncharted waters of a international terrorist, military criminal, war criminal, state criminal, just simply criminal, and taking possession of a nuclear arsenal, which is probably second among the two largest in the world. This has never happened before in the history of mankind, when international terrorist and war criminal, and in criminal in many other respects, is threatening the entire world with a nuclear button that he actually does have.
You're listening to 91.7 FM, WSUW, in Whitewater, Wisconsin. You're listening to Rashkin Report.